If you hold a gun, and I hold a gun, we can talk about the law. If you hold a knife, and I hold a knife, we can talk about rules. If you come empty-handed, and I come empty-handed, we can talk about reason. But if you have a gun, and I only have a knife, then the truth lies in your hands. If you have a gun, and I have nothing, what you hold isn't just a weapon, it's my life. The concepts of law, rules, and morality only hold meaning when they are based on equality. The harsh truth of this world is that when money speaks, truth goes silent.
Wow, that's a pretty neat quote from The Godfather. Except it's not real. Much like half of the dialogue-centric screenshots of today's subject, Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics originally released on the PlayStation 1 like a billion years ago. Then it was re-released on the PSP under the name Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions half a billion years ago. This new version featured new classes, revamped cutscenes, and online play. The people over at Square Enix, clearly having run out of ideas for new and original IPs, wound up finally re-releasing Final Fantasy Tactics. Mind you, this isn't a re-release of the War of the Lions version of Final Fantasy Tactics, but the PlayStation 1 original. So you can forget about these storybook-styled cutscenes.
You've quite a mouth on you, princess.
The multiplayer, the extra story bits, as well as the Onion Knight and Dark Knight, because they're no longer a thing. Lovely, a definitive edition with less content than the previous iterations. I swear to God, if Square tries to sell us War of the Lions DLC, I will go apeshit. Alright, okay, but how does the game actually play? I'm pleasantly surprised to say the graphics don't look too terrible. It's not HD 2D, which is fine. That style has been overused and neglected its full potential for ages now. The upgraded graphics aren't very impressive, but I'll take them over the god-awful blotchy mobile ports that Square crapped out in the early 2010s. The biggest selling point for Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, is the user interface overhaul. This makes the game a lot more manageable than the originals. The originals had an absurd amount of menu management both in and out of battle. The new overlay eases this burden substantially. Even the new combat timeline alone is a godsend. It makes taking non-immediate actions like casting spells run so much smoother. The music still retains its whimsy and sounds just like a PlayStation 1 game, and that's because they didn't change the music. The sound, however, had to be remade, because Square lost the source code for their game. Upon that, the game also adds voice acting, and it's not too shabby.
You would have me believe my brothers want this war. Callow child. The hands that guide history's reins are ever black with blood. Think you Dystark's hand more just?
In the 50 Years' War, who bore a greater burden than they, the common folk? Would you thank them now with higher taxes? Their confidence in us is sorely tested as it is.
But tell me, Agrius, what if Cardinal Delacroix makes to use me, like all the rest?
I do not believe he will, my lady.
Give it a command, Ramza.
Me? Must I? Mayhap you could...
What are you talking about? Your stone brought the thing to life. You're its master.
Very well. Dance!
Oh, for the love of the gods.
I've never beat Final Fantasy Tactics, so I don't want to say too much about the story. I have got about halfway through War of the Lions back in the day, so I think I got the basic gist of what's going on here. If you like heavily political storylines centering around oligarchy, you'll be eaten good with this one. The main character, Ramza, is kind of a naive idiot who refuses to open his eyes to the unfortunate reality of the world around him. I don't think that will change by the end, but at least Delita is based.
Most men but play the part they're given. Most live and die not knowing they play a part at all. But I am past all that now. I am their puppet no more. I will exact from them the price of the merry dance they lead.
If you've watched my Symphony of War video, you'll know that I much prefer the humans don't need a god to be awful to each other type of storytelling, but I'll take what I can get, a deep tactical RPG that showcases the reality of feudalism. Unfortunately, that's pretty relatable to today, isn't it? I'm fairly certain later in the game they're gonna pull some "it's a demon lord controlling the people" kind of bullshit. It's Final Fantasy after all. Final Fantasy Tactics asks the question, what if we made chess convoluted? And surprisingly, it works. When it comes to turn-based tactical games, there are two camps, Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Tactics. The Fire Emblem camp is a simple red team versus blue team. Strategy mostly relies on unit types, positioning, and ability procs. However, in Final Fantasy-styled SRPGs, each individual's stats and actions determine the order in which they move. Elevation is more of a factor, and unit skills are more of a focus. Honestly, I probably should just call it the Tactics Ogre Camp, but unless you play SRPGs, you're not gonna know what that is. I gotta make this make sense for the normies. Upon that, Final Fantasy Tactics in particular uses a tick system. To this day, people with a superior word crafting skill than myself have been trying and failing to explain how this system works to newcomers. So I'll keep it simple. The game uses an in-game clock rather than a solely stat-based turn system. Each character has a charge timer. When that timer reaches 100, they can act. The speed stat determines how fast that process is. However, different actions have different costs. So a player can manipulate turn order by taking or not taking actions. The tick system adds significantly more potential for strategy, as several skills require charge time to activate. Of course, this means sometimes enemies, as well as your own units, have a chance to move before an ability goes off. All of this adds up to a gloriously chaotic system where if you take the time to learn it, you will come out feeling like a tactical genius. There are very few games where I felt like a mastermind for casting a spell at nothing. Action abilities are your bread and butter in Final Fantasy Tactics. They're not just spells for your mages, but special moves for your physical damage dealers as well. Spells can range from the black mage's elemental attacks to the white mage's various heals and buffs. Then you get stuff that's a little bit more unique, like the Time Mage, who can speed up allies and slow down enemies, or the Geomancer, whose magic attacks are dependent on what type of terrain they're standing on. And you have something like the Summoner, who can nuke a wide area whilst avoiding damage to allies. Like I said, the less magic-oriented classes also have abilities too. There's the Dragoon's Jump, which has the Dragoon jumping into the air and striking multiple tiles away. This attack is delayed depending on the distance between the Dragoon and its target. A great skill for the early game is the Monk's Aura Blast, which is an effective ranged option and hits fairly hard. Then you have something a little bit more simple like the Throw for the Ninja, which allows the ninja to throw weapons and bombs, or something a little bit more scummy like the Thieves' Steal, which obviously allows you to steal shit, and that's just to name a few. I'd be remiss not to mention support, reaction, and movement abilities. If the name alone doesn't tell you everything you need to know, here's a quick rundown. Support abilities are generally passive abilities that allow you to do things like equip other classes' weapons or tame monsters. Reaction abilities have a chance to proc when attacked. This can be something along the lines of a counterattack or turning invisible, and movement abilities obviously correlate with movement. These vary from increased movement range to giving units the ability to fly. Final Fantasy Tactics has always been a somewhat difficult game. I feel like it's harder at the beginning simply because you lack options, but once you start leveling up your classes and getting more jobs available to you, new abilities and all that stuff, it starts to get easier, or at the very least it gets a lot more interesting. This, of course, is considering you, like me, are playing on the normal difficulty. I don't know what hard mode difficulty plays like, and I'm not going to play easy mode because I wish to maintain whatever self-respect I have. You'll just have to power through the beginning parts and the threat of permadeath. That's right, permadeath exists in this game. Luckily, when a unit gets knocked, they get 3 turns before they're gone for good. All you have to do to mitigate death is revive it. There is RNG bullshit in this game, but it's not nearly as RNG bullshit as something like XCOM. Some of the boss fights certainly feel overwhelming, and normally that's a skill issue. Luckily, this remaster makes retrying fights very easy. Unfortunately, you can't skip the dialogue if you need to change the formation of your party. Speaking of party formation, that's another big improvement. I appreciate that now you can view a battlefield before you deploy your troops. You can't see enemy units in the story missions, but for the random encounters you can. The random encounters are also not only skippable, but you can initiate them at your leisure. This makes grinding so much more efficient. There is a caveat to grinding too much though. Enemies will level up with you, and their equipment will outpace yours. You'll need to be checking the stores frequently to upgrade your units. Speaking of units, while there are basically what I would call hero units, I have an affinity toward using generics, just because they can be customized. I'm one of those losers that makes characters after people he knows in real life. All of the characters that I'm using in this playthrough are based off of people on my Discord. You should definitely check out my Discord. Also, you should like and subscribe. Amongst the units I made, there is Fuckhead. He's a black mage with a gun.
You're finished!
Well. Then I should fall to a mere
Black mage with a gun.
Why did I make a black mage with a gun? Because it's cool. Is it meta? Probably not. Meta builds are for losers. I made myself a samurai with a polearm because polearms are objectively better and cooler than katanas, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong. I also made a death axe knight and a bard that does drugs. Needless to say, the sheer amount of builds you can do in this game is staggering. You'll need to grind JP to unlock classes and their abilities. This is gained like experience points. Keep in mind, JP is specific to the current job. Once you get a decent pool of classes and abilities, you'll be able to mix and match them, creating a wide variety of builds. I feel like I've covered everything that really needs to be said about a first impression of a game. At the end of the day, Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles is a good remaster of a PS1 title. The logic of not including the War of the Lions content is lost on me, as it adds a lot more to the game. Because of that, I refuse to call this a definitive edition, because a definitive edition should have all of the DLCs or the contents from any other previous remasters. It kinda just feels lazy. That being said, I still enjoy the game. It's a lot more approachable than its predecessors, and I'm hoping the success of this game brings out more games like it. Who knows? Maybe Square will finally get their shit together and make decent games once again, instead of trying to appeal to the Western audience, which everyone knows you don't want to do. Anyway, as always, there will be a link to the game in the description below. I'm going back to bed.